I was speaking to a colleague of mine the other day, and they told me the story of an underwriter that they'd met recently. He was 26 years old, and he was worrying whether his job would be obsolete in the next 5 to 10 years, and that if he didn't get the right training, he wouldn't be able to adapt in STEM sector. So to me, that story was indicative of the challenge that we're facing in the insurance industry, which I think is two-pronged. First, that we're struggling to attract new talent to the market and then retain that talent once it's here. And second, that insurance is changing so quickly that the skills that people have today may not be the skills that they'll need in the next decade. So let's just deal with that, attracting the new talent first. The stark fact is that our industry is facing a talent shortage, particularly when it comes to young people like yourselves, that we need to drive the future forward. Between 2015 and 2017, the population of young adults in our industry dropped from 18% to 10%. It's a remarkable statistic. And 4% shows that the research is showing us that only 4% of young job seekers have a desire to work in our sector. And I was reading a KPMG report that was published the other week that found that the UK's financial services sector's talent crisis is because of the poor reputation of financial services, with 41% of the people outside of our industry saying that our work sounds boring. So when one of my colleagues, who back then wasn't in the sector, told his mum proudly and excitedly about his new job at Lloyd's, she replied, "Darling, that's wonderful, but it's in insurance." He was utterly crushed. But today, having worked in the industry for 4 years and having seen at first hand the value of what we do, he's a zealous advocate. Maybe he's a bit too zealous actually, because I think his invites to barbecues for the summer are drying up with the enthusiasm he's expressing for our industry. So I think the point for me is that insurance has got an awful lot going for it, and yet people outside of our industry simply don't get it. If we're all perceived as dull, then we need to do a better job of communicating and demonstrating a more appealing employee value proposition to candidates, and much more importantly, in creating an inclusive culture where everyone feels that they're respected and valued. I'm sure you'll have all read the recent Bloomberg report into inappropriate behaviour in and around the Lloyd's market, which made for pretty painful reading, but highlighted the need for our market to create a more inclusive and respectful culture. It's imperative that we do this very well if we're to attract the brightest talent into our sector. At Lloyd's, we've been trying to do that by taking the opportunity to lead the sector on diversity and inclusion through a raft of initiatives, including the International Dive-In Festival, our new market-leading care policies, and the unique independent market-wide survey that we're about to embark on, in fact, next week, to identify how we can improve our culture. That will be the biggest survey on culture that's ever taken place in the insurance industry. So we know there's much more to do, and much more that we could do in our area, but we will address it urgently. So perhaps more broadly, companies must invest in retaining and attracting their employees. We need to overhaul recruitment so that candidates are selected from a more diverse pool available to fill what are new and more specialised roles. We must define clear, tailored benefits to an employee, and we must offer tailored and personal career development. And we must put in place systems to identify quickly and early future leaders from all backgrounds, all genders and all cultures. I was saying before I came in the room when I was talking to Roger, there's only one question I ask myself consistently, but it's almost the last question I ask myself at the end of the day, is would the 54-year-old John Neal employ the 25-year-old John Neal? And the day the answer to that question is no, is the day that I should stop working. It's really, really important that we recognise the value that young people can bring to our industry and give them a chance. So to that end, in a short space of time, we've actually redesigned our leadership model at Lloyd's that identifies what skills are needed to take the organisation forwards. And we talk about leaders being insightful, enduring, adaptable, passionate and forward-thinking. So we're using different types of terminology to define a leadership trait. So you'll notice it doesn't reference experience or technical skills. It's a very different and behavioural-based approach. It's important that leaders communicate with impact and inspire cultural transformation in their business. It's important leaders are brave in the decisions they make, have the ability to work within a team, build a team, and have strong organisational capability. And trust is fundamentally important to everything they do. So for us, and the leadership model we're building, it needs a shared understanding of what great leadership looks like and create a way of raising the bar and create an opportunity to really bring on the next generation of new leaders. We've actually assessed at Lloyds our senior leaders against that profile model, and that's in a positive context, because in doing that, the data will then inform us that we set all of our leaders up for success. In my experience, it's never a leader that fails you, it's you who fails the leader. So if someone's progressed in a career to a point where you're prepared to give them a chance in a leadership role and they don't succeed, it's your fault because you put them in the wrong leadership role. So it's really important you go through a well-defined process to understand what their skills and attributes are and put them in the right role. So I think the focus on leadership is critically important if we're going to build that diverse and inclusive culture. But it needs quite a lot of sustained work, so it needs to be led very, very consistently from the top. So for existing and prospective employees, and indeed external stakeholders to the business, to know you're serious about making these decisions properly and on an informed basis around leadership offers a visible commitment to those inside and outside the organisation. And if you're not seeing that in your own organisation, you should ask why you're not seeing it and what the organisation is doing about it. I don't think anybody would be offended by that question, and I'd be disappointed if they're unable to answer it well. And it's worth reminding us what's at stake here. When it comes to attracting new people, the insurance sector is not the only show in town. We are now competing with those seriously innovative companies who most of the population think are interesting places to work. The Facebook, the Airbnbs, the Googles. And we're competing against them for the brightest talent, and everyone is doing their best to win it. So we can't afford to fall behind in the race. We do need the best people if we're to deliver the right marketplace for the future in insurance. And the second challenge I mentioned earlier on is to make sure that we match the skills for those that will be needed in the future. So when I started in insurance too many years ago, I had no idea where insurance would be heading on its current trajectory. Every aspect of the way in which we do business, every product that we're about to offer a customer, every service that we provide them needs to be rethought and reconsidered in a modern world that's driven by technology, data, and clear insight, all driving change. When we were talking about the prospectus that Lloyds launched to the marketplace, some of you may have read it last week, we were talking about the claims proposition, and we were challenging ourselves as to how good that proposition needed to be. So if you read it, we talk about paying a claim before the claimant knows that they've had a loss. And I know almost everyone when they read that thinks that's crazy, how can you actually do that? Well, we did our research to determine how quickly do people pay the claim, and we should compliment direct insurers in the UK. They're pretty good at getting a first-party motor claim paid in 48 to 72 hours. Best in class was Ping An in China, who have reduced the life cycle of paying a motor claim down to 15 minutes. So people are dramatically changing the way in which standards operate in our industry, and we have to design our systems, our processes, our future to match that type of standards. And we know that there are insurers already adopting the new technology that's out there. We all like to talk about those new technologies, but the Hong Kong Federation of Insurers is already building a blockchain-based auto insurance platform. AXA already offer flight delay insurance over a blockchain platform which has parametric triggers and smart contacts.